Welcome to the Speak by Design podcast, where we study personal style, message structure, and message strategy so you can become a consistently compelling force. Let's dig in. The most toxic feeling on a team is apathy. And the reason apathy is so disgusting as an emotion on a team is that we put up with it. Most leaders will put up with apathetic team members because they're still performing. It's just their attitude that has changed. And people will stay apathetic at companies for long amounts of time before making a change. So where does apathy come from? It's usually when the employee loves the organization, but also hates the organization at the same time. And they're in equal proportions to one another. And what it looks like to those of us in the room with that apathetic person is we think the person doesn't care, isn't listening, and is disengaged. Most often they are apathetic toward the work. So what can the leader do? Well, your toolkit, you can inspire them with new goals. You could give them new discretionary authority to work on a new project. So movement and restructuring the team usually helps a great deal. You could ask them about what has been disappointing to them in the past and how can you rectify it. The other thing you can do if it's more rampant and many of the team members have this apathetic feeling, then you need to co-create culture. And that's what we're going to focus on in this lesson. How do you get your team to be the change that they want to be? Because so many teams, and especially the larger the team is, they will think it's the leader's job to fix everything. And they will not believe that they even have the power to influence the change anymore. But you can create a forum for them to believe and to do the work of co-creating the culture that they want. So here's what we're going to talk about today is how do you get people to decide what values they want the culture to have, and how do you teach them how to live those values by their actions and by their words, and to uphold those values under pressure when mistakes are made or when there are setbacks in projects, and keep each other accountable in a respectful, caring way about these values versus yelling at people or criticizing them for not living the values. Can we encourage one another to stay true to our values when they are challenged? And it's important that the team, so let's imagine a large organization and there are hundreds of teams in the organization. I'm talking at the team level, which might be a group of 6 people, 8 people coming together and creating their team culture. Let me give you an example of how we did this with an advisory firm who wanted us to help change the team culture for a group of executive assistants across, I think it was 7 different offices. We sent them a few reflective questions for them to ponder before we brought the whole group together. And the questions we asked them were, number 1, what experience do you want to give people when they meet you? Because these executive assistants were in the reception areas. They were the first face people would see that represents the company. So what is the experience you want to give people, clients, when they arrive? The second question was, what are 3 to 5 ways you can create that experience? And they came up with a whole bunch of actions just based on that. And we said, list all the actions that might create that experience. And I'll share some of the actions they shared. The first was show more enthusiasm on my face. Move closer to people when they share stories. Provide more energy in our handshakes and gestures in general. Use more stillness when listening. Intensify eye contact and ask purposeful questions. And the last thing they all agreed to was that they wanted to elevate the way they dressed. And because that was something that would require personal investment, the company actually gave them an allowance to do that. And the result was incredible. They became the change that was needed and wanted by the organization to help elevate the brand for when new clients come in, because those receptionists, they're the front door. They truly are the front door to the organization, and they set a tone of what client service means to that company. And because there was an investment given to them to go purchase new clothing, they felt very important by that investment as well. So I share that not to say that you need to give people money on your team, but it definitely showed the organization's desire to support their cultural change that they wanted to make on their team. How can you do this? So you could send people questions in advance and have them and bring them together. One of my favorite questions to ask people is, who in your company exemplifies the ideal coworker? And I make sure that when I'm asking the group, I say, do not list people in this room. It has to be people outside of these walls, maybe in different functional groups that you admire for the way they behave. And so they would list the people. And then in listing the people, we would go through each person and say, what does that person do? How would you describe their personality? And people would say, oh, that person is honest, respectful, trustworthy, caring, detail-oriented, proactive. But we'd make a list of all those characteristics. And anytime something was mentioned multiple times, so let's say, like on my own team, we have some real superstar coaches. Michelle Davis is a great example of someone who really walks the talk. She leads by example in every training. If she's teaching people how to have a strong start and a strong close, she makes sure that her opening to that presentation or training is rock solid, clear, compelling, interesting, creative, but also incredibly concise. And the way she handles questions by answering them directly, she is modeling exactly the communication that we're teaching the participants to have. And then there's Marianne, who's incredibly growth oriented, always thinking about what else can we add to this training. Medina Bayori, same thing, always looking at how can we customize this material even further to this client's needs. And then there's Kate Height and Paige Glendenning, who do such a great job of caring about their clients, forging a personal relationship with the people that they privately coach, looking for ways to help them in between sessions or checking in when they know the person has had an important presentation, making sure that it went well and sending them well wishes about it. And then there's Kat Evans, who's so prompt in sending follow-up notes and next steps and challenges to the individual of what they should try next, sending additional resources, pointing them toward other things they can be listening to and watching. I really could go on and on about our team and how good they are at taking care of our clients. But from talking about the strengths of our coaches, we came up with 4 values that our coaches are living every day. And those 4 values are, number 1, being a client champion, caring about the client personally and professionally, and making sure clients know and feel that. And then secondly, leading by example. It would not be inspiring if your coach spoke with filler words and rambled and talked about themselves and came across as self-oriented. It's important that the way we talk is exactly a match to how we're teaching others to talk. And then the third is taking initiative, that when there is something we could do to help remove an obstacle or make something better, that we go make that change. We don't wait for somebody else to do it, we do it. We believe that we are the one. We believe that in our own impact. I don't think any of us enjoy that personality type that says, "Oh, yes, I saw that error, but I thought someone else would catch it." If we catch an error, we want to change it. And then our final value that came out of studying the strengths of our coaches was being growth oriented. It's very important on our team that everyone is thinking about, how do we make this better? How do we expand it? How do we use our curiosity to make it bigger and better? And so let me give you an example of that. If we are working on helping somebody improve a presentation, it is pushing ourselves to say, is this the clearest way to tell the story? Is it the most interesting way to tell the story? How can we make this content memorizable to their audience? And in pushing ourselves to be the very best, and we grow in that as well. And all coaches need to be growing with their clients. And that is why we are able to say that we have coached people for decades. And it's not that these people are not great communicators, but it's because we keep developing materials and concepts and new tools and new ways of helping them grow. And, Speak by Design began as a coaching firm that only focused on voice and speech. And now today we focus on leadership development. And it's because we have grown over these decades to focus more on helping the individual, the team, and the company that we're serving at the highest level. And I'm really proud of that growth that we've experienced. But your teams can achieve that as well, just by focusing on the right things, the right values. And notice that those values I gave you, it's not things like, let's work on respect or let's work on trusting one another, because we'd hope that that is the foundation, that those are table stakes, that those are in place. You shouldn't have to tell people to be honest, for example. If you're working with your team and you say, what's a new value we want to see lived across the team, and someone says, we need to live the value of honesty. Ooh, that's a big red flag. That's a red flag that your culture on the team is not healthy. And when that's the case, it may require an investigation or a thorough analysis of, are there people or even just one person who is poisoning the circle, who is detracting from the good work that you all could be doing as a team? Sometimes it's one person, sometimes it's many, and that needs to be taken care of. If you have people who cannot be on board with these values, they have to be handled. It is irrational to put up with individuals on the team who are not consistent with your values, and it derails the entire culture when you allow those people to stay, when you don't take care of it. And it needs to be nipped in the bud. And that is probably the hardest part about leadership, is being the one to make those tough calls when someone needs to be terminated or counseled to go do something else that fits better with their values. Once you have your handful of values, and I recommend that they shouldn't be more than 3 to 5 of these, because you won't be able to remember them, and you need to have them at your fingertips and have them be memorized. The leader should be able to tell a story about each of the values as well. So once you have those values created, they need to be announced and they need to be delivered in a values speech. We have coached people on these speeches, and sometimes they're delivered in a town hall format, and you have multiple leaders talking about each of the 3 to 5 values, and they spend a lot of time on each one. You also, as the leader, need to be able to talk about the values in a concise manner. A 3-minute length of time so that it doesn't require a ton of time. And once you have shared those values, then they need to see them in a poster form somewhere or in a visual. Maybe it's a PowerPoint, but they need to see them regularly, these values, so that it keeps reminding people who we are as a team and what we care about. Because when you get tested, when the team has a mistake or there's a miscommunication, you want them to fall back on these values to help guide them through the conflict, guide them through the obstacle. And if people don't remember them or they can't find them or see them, they will forget them. Another way you can remind people of these values is every time you have a quarterly meeting or even a monthly meeting that you remind people today our value that we're celebrating is X, so that you're always reminding people of the values. When we have our team calls, we always highlight one of our values and we give recognition on the values as well. And we let people share their stories of how they're living that value. So, how would this sound in a meeting? Let's suppose you have a monthly team meeting, and in that meeting, you open up with before we dig into our agenda, our theme for the meeting is around our value takes initiative. So, you choose one of your values and you say, let's open up by everyone sharing an example that they're proud of, how they took initiative, and then you let everybody share a personal point of pride. You could shift that and say, I want everyone to think about who in this room has exemplified taking initiative, and let's celebrate someone else. So you can't talk about yourself, but talk about someone else in this room and how they took initiative. I did this for a client we were working with who was going through a massive change transformation. And what we did was we made posters celebrating the new values. And then we had everybody could vote on who best exemplified each of the 5 values. We had 5 values. And then it was almost like a contest. And we had 5 different people who then were recognized at the end of the meeting. And they all got a prize. They got uh, I think they got a sweatshirt, or I can't remember what we gave them. And then at the end, everybody received a coffee mug that had the 5 values printed on the coffee mug. And we all did a big coffee toast together. After that meeting, those posters with the 5 values were positioned all around the shop floor. This was a group where they were building machines. So we had it in the manufacturing area. We also had it in the coffee areas, the lunch room, and the meeting spaces, the conference spaces. So you couldn't get away from these values if you tried. Everywhere you went, people were looking at these values, either on the coffee mugs that people would bring into the conference rooms for group meetings or on those posters, as well as the leaders kept talking about them. And because of that recognition that had been given to the 5 people who best exemplified those values, it set a tone of we're looking at this, we're valuing this, we want more people to exemplify these values. The other thing it does is it helps the people who don't align with these values figure out very fast that this is not the place for them. And it helps you as a leader counsel those people to move on. We also worked with a group who had some real challenges with their culture. And they knew that if leadership told them what the new values were, that it would only be more demotivating to the group to be told again that these are the values you must uphold, and for them to feel like they weren't a part of creating them. So when you need people to be a part of the creation of values, use surveys, use focus groups, make it a much bigger effort so that everyone truly is involved in shaping the new culture. Now, there are some groups who will need training on living and acting on these values. This isn't needed all the time. For smaller teams, they will know how to exemplify and live these values. But when you have really large groups, for example, one time we were helping a 300-person team work on shifting their values. And for them, it was helpful to go through role play based or scenario based training where we put them in moments of conflict that tested these values and had them practice new ways of handling the conversations, handling the conflict, not avoiding the conflict, not fighting or becoming overly emotional during the conflict, but working through the conflict in a very productive way while maintaining those values and good communication skills. So if you know that you're doing a big change culturally by shifting to these new values, you may need to include a learning component. In closing, it's one skill to be able to announce and reveal new values for an organization. It's a completely different skill to co-create culture with a team. This is a more advanced communication art. Ask yourself the question, does my team need to be inspired with an effort around co-creating new values? You'll know if they would. All right, everyone, have a great rest of your day. And as we say at Speak by Design, keep leading by example. Take care, everyone. If you are enjoying all of these lessons, but now you're hungering to turn all of this into skills and habits that make this work intuitive and natural so that you don't have to think about it, then you want to join Speak by Design University. That's our coaching program that gives you private coaching, group coaching with me, group training, self-paced learning, as well as exceptional networking with other people like you. This program is for managers and above, people whose careers are on fire and they're looking to hit their next level and they want to do that sooner rather than later. Check it out at speakbydesign.com/join. That's speakbydesign.com/join, and you can start with us at the 1st of next month. We hope to see you there.